They're such beautiful fish. You can see on the sonar that it's 35 feet and climbing. You can see that Slimer's hanging out of his mouth. I got some ice in there. I didn't realize this was such a big rainbow.
Canadian Sport Fishing is brought to you by Rapala Premium Fishing Gear, crafted from experience. Yamaha on the water. This is my Yamaha. What kind of Yamaha are you? Dickies, a legend in work since 1922. Lucky Strike. More fish fight with a Lucky Strike.
It's the first day of spring. I'm here on the lower Niagara River. I'd say probably about 2 miles north of Niagara Falls. And look at this, second rift, and I've got a beautiful trout. After all, when you think of springtime, you think of catching trout, right? Well, here in the Niagara River, you can fish all winter long. These fish come in about September, along with the salmon and brown trout, and then they stay in the river right through until the following June. And you can see this guy is fighting hard, because I've got my drag set pretty tight. You can see there's a lot of shore fishermen, and those guys can cast about this far. So the last thing I want is to get my fish to run in there into their line. Now, one of the things I'm doing today is testing some new gear that I'm very excited about. This is the new TS2 spinning outfit, and you can see that it's got a split grip. Look at this for sensitivity. And you know what? I think I felt that fish just smelling my bait before we actually grabbed it, and then I set the hook. You know, this is so amazing. We've got water temperatures that are just above freezing. There are ice chunks floating right down the Niagara River. And the air temperature is about zero, about -2 with the wind chill factor. And you can see this guy is fighting so hard. It just amazes me that these trout in near freezing water temperatures have so much energy. Look at that, big head shakes. This is a prime female, and you can see the nice red stripe down the side. I'm going to try to keep it out. You can also see that little corky drifter that I've been using, and that Slimer's right on the edge of the mouth. So if I do this properly, one-handed, see if I can get him to drift right back into this nice basket net, and I'm just going to wait to see if this fish is going to settle down before I lift it up. You know what? This is kind of hard. This isn't a monster fish, but you know what? That's a good 7-8 pound prime rainbow trout. And what I got to do here, because we are dealing in current conditions, I've got my foot on the electric trolling motor because I'm trying to keep into the current. So this is kind of interesting. I've got my pliers and everything set up right there. So watch this. You talk about doing the juggling, you know. I'm controlling the electric, and I'm watching where we're heading here in the current. And this fish, as soon as I touched it, started thrashing around. I'm using very small hooks, so they're actually hard to see. So I'm going to get that hook out there, and I'm going to tell you about the secret bait that I'm using in just a moment. And hopefully this one won't fly out of my hands. Now, isn't that a gorgeous rainbow trout? That was my second rift. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. You can see why they call them rainbows. Look at that nice cheek, beautiful sides on their body. They're such beautiful fish. What I want to do is get this one back, because I can feel she's full of eggs. So I'm going to get it back into the basket net. I'm going to put that net over the side, and you're going to see how fast this rainbow is going to take off. I'm trying to just get it out of that shallow basket. There's that nice rainbow. You want to say goodbye to it before it goes? Look at that. Beautiful. You know, one thing about the Niagara River, it's a big river. It's probably one of the biggest rivers in eastern Canada that connects Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. And where we are now, we're in 180 feet of water. So I'm getting these steelhead that are holding up on a shelf. We call it the Queenston backdrift. And that shelf is about, from the shoreline, comes out about 200 yards from shore. So you can see the other fishermen in there in that boat that's hanging down the side. I'm using a 3-way swivel rig. So that's my sinker that you see there with the 3-way swivel. Then I've got a little corky that I'm using to suspend my bait off the bottom, right there. And then my hook with my secret weapon. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. This is it right here. I can't believe this artificial lure is so lifelike. You can see that I'm using, I'm all excited here. I'm using the 4-inch white strip.
Dickey's Sport Fishing Sweepstakes.
We didn't think it was anything big, just like a snag or something. And my uncle, he handed me the line and he told me to reel in as fast as I could. And I didn't realize what was happening. I thought it was just a small fish. And eventually I saw it in the water and I saw how big it is. It was huge.
We'd love to hear your fishing story. Go to our website and enter the Dickey's Sport Fishing Sweepstakes. It's free, and you could win some great prizes.
You know, I get a lot of questions on our website at Ask Italo asking me how to make different presentations, and one of the ones that are very popular in southern Ontario is drifting for migratory trout and salmon in deeper water. When I say deeper water, deeper than 10, 20, 30 feet in places like the Niagara River and another place called Port de Lucie. One of the most popular rigs or presentations to use there is called a 3-way rig, and that's what I've got rigged up here. Okay, so you need a 3-way swivel. So this is a swivel, 3-way swivel. One end of it is connected to your main line, and in this case I'm using 8-pound test. This is a tough line, and you can see it's like a fluorescent blue color. On one of the ends, you tie on about a 1 to 3 inch tag of line, and then you add some kind of a weight. And then on the third one, you have your actual leader that goes down to whatever you're using, either a spawn sack or in my case, the Slimers with the little corky. Now I'm going to explain to you the actual components because they're very important. Okay, I'm just going to put this down for a minute. When it comes to weights, there's different weights that you can use. The most common ones used here on the Niagara River are these 3 that I'm showing. These 2 are called pencil weights. This one is 1 ounce, and this one is also 1 ounce, but notice that it's a little bit longer. This one is also 1 ounce, but notice it's shaped like a little ball, okay? The one that's longer works well in shallower water, and if the drift is not too fast. The other 2 are designed for fishing in deeper water because the weights are more compact. Very, very important. Man, these fish are like hooking a tiger by the tail. That fish hit so hard, and I can actually feel him chomping on the bait before I set the hook. And usually they hug the bottom, but this guy came right to the top. He's literally, look at, on the surface, tearing line out. This is amazing. The good thing about being here in this Queenston backdrift is that I'm out of the main current. The main current that you have going down the river is pretty strong, and there's a lot of little whirlpools that are created. They almost look like funnels. So this is kind of nice to fight the fish right here. Look at this guy fight. Look at all over the place. A lot of the waterfowl are actually staging. So we've got all kinds of small ducks that are popping up around the boat. Most of them are diving ducks, like old squaw. They're the ones that are black and white. You know what? This is a gorgeous male rainbow. He has a huge head, big mouth. If I can just lift him up, I'm going to try to get him around this other side of the boat. And I can see that Slimers sticking out of his mouth. He tried to eat it. What a fighter. No wonder this fish came right to the top. He's got so much energy. Watch this when he comes up if he opens his mouth. Look at how gorgeous that red cheek is. He's just in my shadow. See the Slimers hanging out? It's on his right side of his mouth. It's going to get the net ready because we're getting down close to the current. You know, in a way, this is kind of exciting fishing because by yourself, you got to watch the current. Oh, tell you what, this guy is hard to lift with one hand. Okay, that is a big steelhead. That fish has to go about 14 pounds. He's one of the biggest steelhead that I've caught here on the Niagara River in recent times. Let me see if I can I can barely get my hand around this guy's caudal peduncle. Let me hold him up. You can see that Slimer's hanging out of his mouth. That fish is about 34 inches long. That is a prime male rainbow. You see that hook type on the lower jaw? how dark his jaw is and how bright his cheeks are? That's because this fish has been in the river for a while, waiting for those females to come up so you can find a mate. Look at the colors. I mean, how can you not say look at the colors when you see how beautiful that fish is? I'm going to get him in the net. I'm going to get the hook out. He was hooked so lightly, I'm amazed at how well these small hooks hold. I'm going to get the net in the water, and I'm going to hold him there for a split second. Man, that fish fought hard. You know, this is a real test of skill because we're dealing with the depth of the water, the current, and these big hard-fighting fish. You know, when I said about this mesh, you see how flat that mesh is? What a great catch and release net. It's rubber coated and it's very light. I used to use, you know, those old rubber nets that are shallow, but when you get a fish in, it weighs the net down so the net stretches. The only problem with rubber is it's really heavy. So the nice thing here is that what they've done is taken a nylon mesh, coated it with rubber, so it's really light, and you can really see where the rubber is here on the thicker material. So the hooks can't get caught in the net. Also, when this gets wet, it's very slippery, so it doesn't take slime off the fish. But the key thing is this basket, shallow basket. It's almost like a live release cradle. And this particular one has a long fiberglass shaft, which I really like because it's really firm. But you know what? Even with this big net, which is designed for salmon fishing, I had a hard time with one arm trying to get that fish in. I had to literally use my rod arm to get that fish into the boat. Ladies, do you know where frogs like to live? Under mud, around water, just like this pond that's behind us. And you know what else lives in the water? Fish. And one fish, a largemouth bass, which is very common in warm lakes and ponds, loves to eat frogs. So if you were using a frog for bait, what you would do is use a larger hook, like the one that I'm using now, catch some frogs, and you have a couple of options of how you hook the frog on for bait. One would be to hook it through the leg, and I'm not going to hook it today, but you'd hook it through the leg so that when you cast it out, it can still swim and kick. Or if you were casting the frog and slowly pulling it back to shore, you would hook it through the lips, so the hook would go through the lips. Okay? So next time you're fishing, if you're somewhere where there's bass and you see frogs along the shore, catch some and use them for bait because they work really well, and you could catch a very large bass.
Closed captioning of this program is brought to you by Yamaha on the water. This is my Yamaha. What kind of Yamaha are you?
You know, one of the key things that you have to do when you're fishing the Niagara is make sure that your weight or your three-way rig is on the bottom. See how I'm turning the boat here? Because the current is actually going upriver now, going towards Niagara Falls. If you watch my rod tip, you can actually see my weight hitting the bottom. So a technique that works really well here is trying to keep the boat in such a position that your line is as vertical as possible while you're still touching the bottom. And that means that you're constantly working the electric back and forth to try to keep your line going up and down. Because you can see how fast I'm moving here. Today we don't have a lot of wind. On some days when you get a lot of wind that actually pushes you into the current or with the current, the electric is even more important. So this is all you do. I'm actually using the current to deliver my bait to the fish, but I got to keep it close to the bottom. You know, this is amazing. To be able to come out here in this cold weather and to bounce bottom 20 to 30 feet down and to get these gorgeous big trout to hit, it's just unbelievable. It's a real Canadian experience. Oh, I can see that fish. This is a beautiful silver female and she's really plump. You can probably hear that wind. That wind is picked up. It's about 20 or 30 kilometers an hour and it is cold. So what I'm going to do is try to get this fish around. This is a much brighter fish than some of the other fish we've been catching. And I'm just going to have to get the net. I'm going to work it over here. Look at this. What a gorgeous migratory rainbow trout. Okay, I've got it in the net. I'm going to get it down on the floor. You know, the nice thing about these nets are that they're plastic coated. So even though the fish is laying there, it shouldn't thrash around too much. Now here, when you're fishing the Niagara River, you have to be very careful if you look out on the outside of the boat, you can see the big swirls of current that are swirling around. And on the inside here, we have this backdrift. And that noise that you hear is the actual ice hitting the hull of the boat. That's how cold it is. So I'm just going to get control back of the boat. And I'll tell you, these electrics are invaluable. And I'm going to show you how gorgeous this rainbow is. She's hooked just in the side of the mouth. And you know what? This fish has also broken somebody else off. I got my hook out. And there is another hook right here that I'm going to try to get out. Look at this. There's another hook from another fisherman. Small hook. And I'll just put that down here on my bag. You never know, I might use it later. And let me just get my rubberized mitts on to show you here. You can see that this is a plump female rainbow. And I'll see if I can keep her in the net. And slow down. It's going to be released in a moment. I just want to hold it up for you so you can see it. That fish is about, I'm guessing, 3.5 to 4 pounds. And you can see how bright silver it is. That means that it hasn't been in the Niagara River very long. I'll tell you what, I'm glad that I've got these mitts on. So I'm just going to lay the fish down and I'm going to get it over the side. And even though we're out in the main current, we should be okay. Just try to control the boat a little bit. What I got to do is try not to get ice inside the actual net. You can see how strong that current is. That fish should be ready to go in just a moment. This live release net is so nice. And come on, nice rainbow. You're going to go back into the river. And there it goes. For fishing big waters like the Niagara River in the wintertime, it's so important to have a good boat and to have the electronics so you can control the boat even in the current. This electric trolling motor that I'm using is 84-pound thrust. It's got a lot of power. I can actually troll with it if I wanted about 4 or 5 miles an hour. But here I'm using the electric to control my drift. And also when I get a fish on, to keep the boat out of the main current. And I'm always looking at this sonar. You can see that there's a boat fishing just ahead of us here. They're fishing the inside of the drift. You can see on the sonar that it's 35 feet and climbing. So you can see how it's getting a little bit shallower here. These migratory rainbow trout are laying on the 20 to about 18-foot shelf, which is between here and the shoreline. And these are actually bait fish that are here just below the surface. And you can see the water temperature is literally freezing. It's 31 Fahrenheit at the surface. And I'm not surprised because you can see the ice all over the surface of the water and you can hear it hitting the hull of the boat. So we're just starting to get up on that ledge. The bait fish though are up high. That's okay because we're getting those steelhead bottom bouncing right here on the bottom in about 20 feet of water. Okay, you know, some people will use very long rods when it comes to migratory trout fishing, especially if you're stream fishing. But because I'm boat fishing here, and we're fishing in fairly deep water, anywhere from about 20 to 35, 40 feet, I actually prefer to use a shorter rod. And the rod I'm using today is 6.5 feet long, and it's got a very sensitive handle. You can see it right here. It's actually called a gap grip. And it's ideal because you can feel everything, even through this mitt that I had on my right hand, I can actually feel the blank and everything that's going on the bottom. Look at the way this beautiful rainbow is fighting. I haven't had a really good look at it, but it looks like a pretty silver fish. Amazing. When you consider the water so cold and these fish fight so hard, what a gorgeous silver migratory rainbow. You know, I'm trying to get this fish up as fast as I can so that we don't get pulled into the main river current. But when they've got so much energy, you just can't boss them around. Because this fish came down from about 30 feet of water, it released a little bit of air. You can see some more air bubbles coming up. Just trying to keep his head up. Strong fish. These fish will live out in Lake Ontario most of the time, pretty well through the summer, just feeding on bait fish. And then they come up the river in the fall and they'll winter in here, and there's a lot of bait fish. And I think one of the reasons why they're hitting the organic flesh bait that I'm using is because they think it's a bait fish. You can see we're getting close to that main current. So I'm going to try to get the net and see if I can get this guy in. What a strong fighting fish. Gorgeous silver rainbow, long fish. This guy's long and lean. Look at that. What a beautiful fish going right underneath the boat. Oh. You can just see that little floater that I had on there. Okay, I'm just going to grab the net and see if I can inch him in here. I'm telling you what though, this is all that easier, or it's tougher than it looks. See if I can get him back in here. He's all rolled up in the line and oh, just missed him. Now we're into that main current. This is going to be interesting here. One hand on the net, one hand trying to pick up on the line. Ah, gotta get this net in a little closer. Man, he dove down again. They really use the current to their advantage. So I'm getting him in a little, I hope I land him because I want to show you the nice kype this fish has on it. I'm using very small hooks. Look at the power this guy's got. Very hard to do anything with him when you're a one-man team. If I can just get his head up a little bit more. I got him near the top. One more time. Good thing it's a long-handled net so I can actually lunge out. Ugh. Boy, got him. You know what? This is another big fish. Look at this. I got some ice in there. I didn't realize this was such a big rainbow. Man, we're getting into some big fish today. Now you can see I used a little double hook rig there for that particular fish. And that's because I was experimenting with the slimers, trying to keep it on. So that first little hook is just to keep the slimer straight. And then that second hook got him just in the snout. You know, this guy almost looks like an Atlantic salmon. I'm just going to pop that hook out. Should be able to come out without the pliers, maybe. There. And I'm going to put this down, just rig it on my keeper here. And then I'm going to show you the kype that this fish has. If I open his mouth laying here, look at all the ice I got here in the boat. See this kype down here in this long jaw? It almost reminds me of an Atlantic salmon. And again, I'm going to put my mitt on, at least my right one. Hopefully he's not going to slide out of my hand. What a gorgeous rainbow. Look at that. Lean fish, beautiful silver. He hit in about 35 feet of water. Big river rainbow fishing. Look at how beautiful he is. He just blends in so much. I don't think he's going to stay there long. He's just getting a gulp of water and look at, taking off. What an awesome fish.
Canadian Sport Fishing has been brought to you by Rapala Premium Fishing Gear, crafted from experience. Yamaha on the water. This is my Yamaha. What kind of Yamaha are you? Dickies, a legend in work since 1922. Lucky Strike. More fish fight with a Lucky Strike.
Today, I caught all my fish using a little floating device called a little corky and using something very new that's called slimers, and I've got them right here. All of the fish that I caught, I happened to catch on white. It comes in different colors and different sizes. This is the 4-inch, the one that I was holding up, and it's the split tail. You can see the diagram right here on the package, okay? There's also a 3-inch model, which is this one here. This particular one is a chartreuse. You can see that it's about 1 inch shorter, and it has a little bit of a twister tail, so it gives you a little bit of a different action.